going to call to order the September 4th meeting of the West Sacramento City Council, the Redevelopment Successor Agency, and the Financing Authority. We're going to begin this week, as we do each week, with the Pledge of Allegiance. We'd like to invite our guests to join the council and staff in the pledge, which tonight is going to be led by Troop 2233, the Girl Scouts. So if we could all please stand, and Scouts, if you'd lead us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Troop 2233. Councilmember Sandine, you're the Girl Scouts whisperer of the council. Did you have any comments that you would like to make?
Oh, I'm excited that they're here tonight. I had the opportunity, they just spent the summer working on safe routes to school. As I understand, I went to one of their presentations, the final presentation they had for their Bronze Award, which is a big, big deal in Girl Scouts. And so it's great that they made the time to come be with us tonight. And I think they may have asked to speak about their project in public comment. I'm glad they're here. Welcome.
Yes, welcome. All right, the council did meet in closed session this evening to conduct our performance evaluation for the city manager. No action was taken. That brings us to item 1A, which is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the city council. As is noted on our agenda, the council is prohibited by state law from taking action or having a discussion about issues that are brought up under item 1A, but it is an important opportunity for a public forum. To that end, we ask that anybody wishing to address the council on this or any other item this evening to please fill out one of the yellow cards that's available near the front door and turn it into the city clerk. In front of the clerk is a timer that we use to make sure that everybody gets a chance to be heard, and we ask that all comments be limited to 3 minutes. Also in front of the timer, the clerk is a flip chart, and that simply indicates which agenda item number the council is currently considering. The clerk accepts the yellow cards all the way to the up until the conclusion of the staff report on any particular agenda item. Once the staff report's done and the public testimony or the council questions have started, we don't take any additional cards, so if you're here on a particular agenda item, please be sure to get the card in as soon as you can, but definitely by the end of the staff reports. We're also recognizing that for some folks who aren't Girl Scouts, speaking in public can create some nervousness and anxiety. So we do ask that there not be any catcalls or boos or other demonstrations, that we try to maintain a civil discourse here in the chambers. So with that, we do have a few requests to speak under item 1A, and lo and behold, Councilmember Sandine is correct. The first is by Troop 2233 from the Girl Scouts. Yes, and there is so it's your various heights. There's a button also to your right. Exactly.
Not this skin.
I will note, Mr. Mayor, that their families, some families are here as well, so it's great to have their support.
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor Walden and the City of West Sacramento Council members. My name is Addie Dion, and with me is my Girl Scout sisters from Troop 2233, Paige Moiner, Kaylee Sanchez, Lydia Ingram, Katie Dion, Haley Orozco, and Clarissa Cunella. On June 19th, we came to City Council meeting to let you know and drum up interest in our Troop Bronze Award.
The Bronze Award is the highest honor a Girl Scout junior can achieve. For our Bronze Award, we wanted to let kids know the importance of bike safety, safe routes, and the importance of wearing a helmet. We spent over 20 hours working on our project. We researched helmet safety tips, we asked questions, attended bike classes, and had a guest speaker teach us about bike safety.
We paired up in teams and created our presentations with information we thought every kid should know about. We advertised our Bike-a-Paloozas in Facebook, spoke at the City Council meeting, and even created a video encouraging kids and scouts to come to any of our 3 Bike-a-Paloozas. Each Bike-a-Palooza was held in different areas of West Sacramento.
We made sure to visit at least one city park at every event. On Tuesday, August 13th, we completed our last Bike-A-Palooza. We biked over 2 miles in the 100-degree heat, and we were greeted by Councilmember Sandine. She made sure we had an audience for our presentations, and we celebrated our accomplishments with popsicles and giveaways.
We want to give a big thank you to Mayor Cabaldon, Mayor Pro Tim Orozco, and Councilmember Guerrero for your words of encouragement as we started this project. Thank you, Councilmember Sandine, for attending a Bike-A-Palooza and celebrating with us.
Thank you to Sarah Strand, Associate Transportation Planner, for always offering to help with our Bronze Award project and providing us with additional giveaways like bike shirts and bike stickers. We would also like to recognize several city staff who have helped us in past projects.
Thank you to Susan Strand, Recycling Admin Analyst. She has helped us with our Earth Day cleanups. Thank you to Frank Doris and his staff in Public Works who brought buckets for our Earth Day cleanups and allowing us to borrow equipment for our Girl Scout Derby racing events. Lastly, thank you for continuing to support Girl Scouts so that we can bring girls who are go-getters, innovators, risk-takers, and leaders.
That was awesome. Mayor Pro Tem Orozco. And who's Haley? Haley, have you ever seen a vice mayor, the last name Orozco?
It's your chair now. The name tag doesn't have to
Yep.
change. I want to commend every single one of you for going up to that podium and saying a few words. I don't know if you notice it, but it's a very, very difficult task. Public speaking is one of the most fear-inducing activities most people endeavor upon, and you guys just knocked it out of the ballpark. Each year, I look forward to seeing our Girl Scout troops in West Sacramento coming out for a program called West Sac Kids Give Back, and our Girl Scouts actually go above and beyond in that effort. They do their own collection for people in our community in need, and so this year, I'm looking forward to it again. We're all going to be here at City Hall on December 15th, and I hope that you guys know that not only are you invited, but I expect your leadership there as you continue being role models for all the other young ladies in our community. Thank you so much for your courage and for helping us lead in the Pledge of Allegiance. And again, as my colleague has mentioned, thank you to all the wonderful parents who, I know it's not easy, all of the things you have to do in order to ensure the success of the experience of your children, but you're raising beautiful, young, strong girls, and it goes to show in the parenthood. Thank you.
Councilmember Guerrero.
Just want to say congratulations for all you've done. This is really incredible, role modeling for the rest of our community, showing that, bike safety is extremely important, and as we continue to grow, we want to continue to expand that message, and you're providing that leadership for not only our youth, but for our adults. So thank you, and I applaud all the work the families have contributed for supporting our youth and doing that. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Ledesma.
Just want to say thank you so much for being here, for all your leadership in the community, and it sounds like you had a very busy summer and the hot summer days, bicycling in 100-degree weather, is that right? And the parents were with you?
No.
Oh, wow. You really did it on your own.
Go to the next park.
Well, good job to you all. Thank you all for all your leadership, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, let me just add, all the important things that happen in a community happen because of the young people, either the work that they inspire for adults, but most often because you're doing it yourself. When you look around our community and around the world, it just things like recycling that adults just could never get around until folks your age change the way that we think about the environment in so many different ways. And we're seeing that. You're making a difference on young people walking to school, and biking to school, and staying healthy, being out in the community, contributing to the community. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And you may not know this, but when we apply for grants for Safe Routes to Schools programs, we always write down this kind of work, because this is what other donors and government agencies say. Hey, this is a community that's not just the government, It's citizens and people of all ages that come out and make a better community together. So thank you for being here, and thanks for the work that you've been doing. Also, just kudos for your listing of all the staff in the city that have helped. I think so often folks don't see inside of City Hall, and they don't see just the people who make everything happen. And so is both, I know, very, very welcome and appreciated by our staff, but also very smart. If you want to get something done in any community and you want to work with any organization, to start naming off the people who do the real work, not just the mayors and vice mayors and city council members, but the people who do the real work and open the real doors for you. I guarantee the next time you ask them for something, they're going to remember that you gave them the kind of kudos and applause that you did tonight. So very, very smart. You're great advocates as well as great leaders in the community, and we're really glad you were here with us tonight. So congratulations. All right, that brings us then to the next request under item 1A, which is Michael Bish from the Food Bank.
Can you come back up here and help me out with this thing right here? So I wish to register a protest. It's not fair that I have to follow that. A little bit higher. Thank you. My name is Michael Bish. I'm Executive Director of the Yellow Food Bank. Thank you so much for helping me out. And I'm here today to express my gratitude and also to take up where I left off 2 weeks ago. So thank you very much for this proclamation about the Yellow Food Bank grand opening. It was a terrific event. As Councilmember Ledesma said, it was wonderful having the entire county come out to celebrate this terrific community asset that we now have available to battle poverty and food insecurity. It was terrific to have 30 or so elected leaders from around the county. It's not every day that you have that kind of representation from around the county. And of course, there was a strong contingent of the West Sacramento leadership. So thank you so much for that. So for example, here is a very thick Bible of a report. This was commissioned by Sutter Davis. They're federally mandated to produce a community needs assessment every 3 years. This one concluded that every community in Yolo County, apart from Davis, is classified as a vulnerable community due to high levels of poverty and disparate health outcomes. This is an assessment that was produced just a few months ago by the Yolo County Maternal, Child, and Adolescent Health Advisory Board. It says that more than half of families with school-age kids are living with increased stressors related to poverty. More than half. So more than half of your friends. Poverty is a root cause of poor health outcomes in these populations. We are not doing nearly enough to battle poverty and food insecurity in our communities and all the terrible outcomes that derive from that poverty, whether it's increased mental health, poor health outcomes, poor educational outcomes, and the like. We can do much, much better. And if you agree with that assessment, you need say nothing. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Michael.
And city staff.
Thanks. And Danny Langford?
Good evening. So I'm coming to you tonight because I remain concerned over, and I have all summer, over the tall, dry weeds we have all over our town. And I know we have a goat herd, and thankful for the goat herd, but maybe we need about 100 goat herds because there's too many fields all around, especially out by where I live. And I just praise God that we have the firefighters jump on that wildfire that could have gotten away and gotten the Rivas and the other community right around it. I think the weeds, like the Liberty Project across from me, the Richland Project behind me, the open field over by where Southport, I think it's Southport, is going to meet out off of Davis Road when Liberty goes through. All of those fields are tall and dry. And I realize we had a late rain, in spring, but we're a spark away, a cigarette away, a campfire away from a catastrophic event. Before I'm called paranoid or belittled for my concerns, I think we need to take it seriously. And I'm asking you guys, please give staff direction, weed abatement, code enforcement. They're jumping on all kinds of other things. We need those taken care of, please. Please, we don't want paradise happening here. Also, my neighbors, myself and my husband, all along Davis Road, have been asking desperately to get Davis Road from a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit lowered. 30 miles, 25 miles, whatever. There's homes directly on Davis, and with all the backlog on Jefferson, people are cutting across, and it's become a speedway, especially since it got repaired because of the damage the trucks did doing the levee work. It's like a raceway out there. It's dangerous. And Village Parkway is 35 miles an hour, and there's not one home facing it. But we have all kinds of homes, animals, and children on there. I'm asking again for you to give direction to staff to please take care of that. I'd like to give a shout out and thank you to Tracy in the Parks Department. She did a phenomenal job listening to those of us that come up here and speak that feel that we're ignored all the time, especially in notifying the neighborhood around Westmore Oaks on the Fallbrook area. They went door to door, and we really appreciate that because the neighbors actually were glad they got to go to a meeting because they actually knew about what was going on. And lastly, I'm bothered that almost everything on this agenda is on the consent. Please pull Zen City and the grand jury report off. Please have a presentation on that so the community can see. It shouldn't be on consent. We as a community need to know what you're saying and doing. So I respectfully request those things. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, those are our only requests under item 1A, so we're going to proceed to item 1B. Are there official reports from our assigned liaison agencies or other communications this evening? Councilmember Sandine?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The YOLO Local Agency Formation Commission met on August 22nd, and we approved a response to the 2018-19 YOLO County Grand Jury Report and adopted a new policy regarding independent third-party analysis for municipal service reviews. Thanks.
Councilmember Guerrero.
Yes, I was asked to participate in the Governor's Council of Regional Homelessness Advisors. There's working groups, and there's going to be a meeting this Friday in Stanislaus. And the working group I am involved in is related to the shelter working group and the behavioral health working group. And so I am just looking at what exactly is going on. They have several working groups, which includes the LGBT community, jobs program, permanent supportive housing, prevention, racial disparities, rapid rehousing, substance abuse, veterans, youth and family homelessness. And all those working groups will convene and do presentations. It'll be a 6-hour day, chaired by our mayor of Sacramento, Darrell Steinberg, and County Supervisor of Los Angeles County, Mark Ridley Thomas. And we will also look at best practices for regional program approaches, what's been working, and then what we can do to implement in the future. And those recommendations will be submitted to the governor, and this will be an ongoing process up and down the state as far as what is being recommended to the governor. And the other update I wanted to provide was I was very happy to see what the partnership between West Sac Fire Police and Yolo County Emergency Services are doing to prepare for emergency evacuation program. Our highest risk is, flood, and And so we're looking at evacuation zones, noticing how in the Hurricane Dorian, constantly referencing evacuation zones, and each region has a zone which they evacuate out of the city. Well done, and just want to continue to urge we continue to do those presentations so people are more knowledgeable about what is happening in the city. And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Ledesma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just two quick items. From the Commission on Climate Change, I was happy to join Julia Burrows from the Mayor Steinberg's office in making a presentation last Wednesday, the 28th, to our West Sac Chamber of Commerce to give them a briefing on the work of the commission and ask for their outreach. It was the kind of opening launch pad of our engagement with the rest of the city on the efforts of the commission. There was a good reception and good dialogue at the chamber, so I was happy to be there and thank the chamber members for the invitation, and we'll be following up with another subcommittee on government affairs. They've asked us to come back. Secondly, I made this announcement at the last meeting, but we have since made it public in that at the Yolo County Transportation District, we made effective on September 1st that we will begin offering free rides to students and youth in Yolo County. It's a big step. There's still some implementation steps we're going through, but we want to get the message out sooner than later so that students who are buying month-long books can actually save themselves the $30 that would have taken for them to actually buy a book for the month, so they can begin writing free immediately. Like I said, there's still some implementation steps we're going through. One of them was outreach to our school districts throughout, so the transportation staff has been doing that, reaching out to all the school districts throughout, and the feedback so far has been very positive. So just want to give you that update. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, and I have none either. We have no appointments at this meeting, so we're going to proceed to the consent agenda, which is items 2 through 10. Are there items for separate question or comment, or to remove from the consent agenda?
Yes, I'd like to pull item number 4 and 7.
All right, any others? Okay, then on the remainder of the consent agenda, items 2 through 10 minus items 4 and 7, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Orozco and seconded by
Actually,
Councilmember.
can I make a correction? I didn't mean to, I just wanted a presentation, and I kind of have questions. I don't mean to pull them to, I want to keep them on the consent, but I wanted to have them heard. I didn't mean to pull it.
But you want a presentation on them?
Yes, that's all.
Then we would pull them. So
I see.
The consent is, we do questions and answers on consent, but we don't ask the staff to make the presentations on consent. If it's a full presentation, we just do it as a regular agenda item.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so it's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Orozco and seconded by Councilmember Sandin. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Item 4 then is consideration of response to Yolo County Grand Jury reports on flood management in the urban environment and West Sacramento flood control projects funding. So briefly, Ms. Hamilton.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. So I do not have a presentation prepared for this, but we have in the agenda report put together some draft responses to the grand jury report. We did receive the grand jury report at the end of June. We are required, or the City Council is required, to respond to the findings and some of the recommendations that were listed. We have included all those in the report, and the City Council has 90 days to submit the responses back to the grand jury and the forepersons. So that deadline is looming. It's coming up here in a few weeks. So there were 2 reports by the grand jury that they asked the City Council to provide responses for, and that is flood management in the urban environment, Yolo LAFCO, and the role of Reclamation Districts 537 and 900 within the City of West Sacramento, as well as the Yolo County Grand Jury report on missed funding opportunities, West Sacramento flood control projects. And as Councilwoman Sandin reported, WSAFCA did provide responses on that particular report, and they declined to respond to the Yolo LAFCO, the one on Yolo LAFCO. So with that, in summary, the responses that we've provided for you in draft, from staff's perspective, we would say that we agree with basically 2 of the findings, and that we would, a couple of the recommendations are in process, but the remainder of the findings and recommendations we either felt were not correct, or maybe they didn't have all the information, and so we provided some responses that disagreed with the grand jury, as well as declinations on a couple of the recommendations, given LAFCO has taken other actions since that time. So that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, are there questions?
I do have a question. You said that Wasafka had some feedback on this part. What was their feedback?
On which report?
On the letter, for example. Did they have any feedback on the letter in our response back to?
They prepared their own letter.
Oh, they prepared their
As required by.
separate letter?
Yes.
So then I'll be specific for this letter. Is there, looking at F3.
So which letter are you referring to? There's 2.
Yeah, the one on this last 2 pages of the entire report. For the electronic.
So you're referring to attachment 4?
Yes, attachment
Okay.
Yes.
4. Is that the?
All right.
In looking at the disagreement that Wasafka failed to secure federal funding for the 2 appropriation cycles, and eventually we did get our BCR recalculated, but it did take a while for us to get there, correct?
Correct, because the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Office of Management and Budget has quite a significant process in calculating the benefit cost ratio. So it was not necessarily a process that Wasafka was entirely in control of.
Okay. And that's a good response. I would have liked to have having that fleshed out a little bit, so because there is, I mean, in my experience learning about how cumbersome this process is, and going back to DC and having those meetings with those key personnel so they can really understand our issues, and having, looking at R2 where we had to eventually hire a dedicated lobbyist for that, somebody who has those relationships was extremely important. And even when we got there, denied a meeting because for some reason, very sensitive, very delicate process, and it has an impact. And I think that looking at, F3, yeah, that happened, but also kind of fleshing out a little more exactly what you said, what happened, because I think that helps for the grand jury whoever did the analysis, and, if you're looking at it from a distance, you don't understand the complexity of this process, and it is very difficult. And appreciate that, we got to getting a dedicated lobbyist, because, when we were looked over for that last round of funding, that, Sacramento eventually got most of the money, and other regions in this area, but we were left out. That happens because there is something that we weren't embedded in for some reason. Not to say maybe we overlooked it, but it takes a lot of time to, be involved and invested in this process. And I just don't think they understand that. And I want to be able to, just convey that in some way in the letter, but I don't know if the letter's already done, but I just want to be able to, reinforce that message.
So I'd like to keep the letter as is, in part because that entire account is incorrect. Our BCR has been, the benefit cost ratio, which is the central way in which projects are ranked for funding in the OMB process and inside the Corps, is a technical process. It's not, you don't lobby your BCR. It's all about preparing the actual figure, and there's no backlog here at City Hall. If you ask members of Congress, the Corps, OMB, they're astonished at how much improvement we've been able to get in a BCR. BCR is not something you invent. It is, what's the cost of the project versus what are the quantifiable, objectively quantifiable benefits of the project. Right, so it's not about relationships, it's not about the letters, it's not about the meetings, it's about the numbers. And so then the question becomes, how do you count your population? How long is it going to take to build the project? Because if it takes 30 years to build a project, it costs more than if it takes 21. But each one of those decisions about the BCR requires somebody in the Corps and/or sometimes OMB to say, yes, you can change that number to that number. So it's an entirely technical process, which has been ongoing from the very beginning of the project, and the BCR has gone up every time we have made an adjustment. It's also gone down for other factors that the federal government has imposed on it as well. But had the BCR been a different number, it would not have changed the funding outcome from the special appropriation that was made. Because that special appropriation was made for disaster response and after the hurricanes that hit the South, there was a certain amount of money that was available for the entire country. This is not the regular process for making appropriations. And yet, even though we were not the region hit by any hurricane, this region got an enormous amount of the money. And that is to our benefit, because Sacramento and we are in the same line for funding in the normal process. So when Sacramento was the surprise winner of funding in the special process for the southern hurricanes, it took them out of the line and allowed us to now be more competitive in that space. There was no magic about it, and the lobbyist that we've hired since then in order to improve and intensify our work has not changed the outcome in any way possible. Why? Because the Corps and OMB and the White House and the Senate and House staffers on the Hill who worked on the appropriations all said precisely the same thing. Look, we love your project. You're here every other day. We get it. We know. We're impressed with the progress that's been made. We could not possibly send 100% of all the federal money to one congressional district in the entire country. It's just not, we can't do that. And the Sacramento project is farther along. It is more competitive. So it's not a problem with our project, but Sacramento is already getting far more than our share as a region than the rest of the country. And that hasn't changed since. Our BCR has not improved as a result of a lobby, so we haven't gotten any additional meetings from that process. So the letter that you've characterized, I think, is a very polite way of saying that they're entirely wrong. As a region, we should be proud that we were able to get that much money that was not targeted for California at all. We were able to get that money and deploy it for projects that are really critical to us, because when the Sacramento levee system fails, where does that water go? Some of it goes down the river into the bypass or right at the confluence, which is where our city sits. So this was an important issue. It was a strong misunderstanding. Not surprisingly, the grand jury in this extraordinary case, for reasons that remain unknown, chose to conduct its business entirely in secret and seek to influence the outcome of the LAFCO vote and city council votes on this issue, and did not conduct any open hearings on any of this information. So by the time they released their findings, they're rife with inaccuracies, in part because this process was not conducted in an open way. So it isn't surprising, but the letter, as it's been characterized in here, and as West Safeco has also approved, and the Board of Supervisors letter, I understand, is also consistent with everything that is in our, where there's overlap in terms of the findings. The Board of Supervisors has also made consistent findings in this regard. So I know we've disagreed all along about the policy that was adopted by the council and by LAFCO, but the statements that are in the response to in these letters are 100% accurate with respect to the federal funding. There are other questions. We do have a couple of requests for public comment as well. Take that. All right, thanks, Ms. Hamilton. And I'm going to turn the gavel over to Mayor Pro Tem Orozco, because I'm flying to the University of California Regents meeting, which is an important occasion. So I'll be here for just a few more minutes, but just there's no interruption of the chair in between inside the comment. I'm going to hand the gavel now. So.
All right, our first speaker is Pat Flint.
All there is.
Thank you. I have a couple of comments on your responses and a few from the grand jury. Liability, legal precedents in 2003, the Paterno versus the state of California, state that liability falls with the LMA, which I think is the Local Management Association. If I'm incorrect, please correct me. Yolo County Public Agency Risk Management Insurance Authority will not insure the city for levee failure. So I'd like to know what kind of assurances that you are going to bring to the public that if we flood, what's going to happen? Is the city going to go bankrupt? Are they going to take care of the commitments to the community? The community trust is a major issue with most of you sitting on this council, and I think you're all aware of that. You have not considered public safety in a responsible way in the past. The responses to the grand jury report seem inadequate, although the mayor disagrees. You missed a serious funding matter, and I believe your priorities are backwards. You do not put innovations, artificial intelligence, pilot programs, etc., before public safety. You are attempting to play catch-up on 15 years of ignoring significant public safety risks. You're telling the public applying for flood control funding was complicated. Mayor, you just said that, no, it's not a complicated issue. And we've acquired funding before. We just missed the big bucks, is what we've missed. Yet you've managed to have no problem getting grants and funding in other ways, using whatever lobbyists you need to use. I believe you guys just dropped the 8 ball. I don't know whether it was West Africa. I don't know who it was that dropped it, but it was dropped big time. And something about this is just not passing the smell tests with the community. You managed to get funding for other projects. I don't expect you to lose funding again for public safety matters. And I don't know whether you're trying to mislead, deceive the grand jury or us. The grand jury is a private organization that does things in private, not in public. That's the whole purpose of the grand jury. So in your responses, I think they needed to be a little more detailed. I think you needed to take a little bit more under consideration. And I think you need to take safety matters very, I don't know what to say. You need to take it more as a public safety issue for us, for the community, not for you as council members. We elect you to protect us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flint. I'd like to call up Danny Langford. Thank you. At this juncture, are there any more council discussion on the matter?
I'll just make a quick comment, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you for chairing. Not to get into the response itself, I'm fine with. The responses that might, because the report itself sort of dealt with a multitude of issues that, or tried to deal with a multitude of issues that really, and reading them, in my mind, kind of addressed some kind of core communication issues between 4 agencies, the reclamation districts, 900, 537, the city, and us. And I think we responded in an appropriate way. And I'm glad to hear West Africa is considered, or at least penned one letter in response, and they declined on the second. Is that right?
Yes, the grand jury provided Wasafka with the report on Yolo LAFCO and invited them to respond, which means they weren't required to respond. And Wasafka, after reviewing it, decided that they were going to decline on responding.
Thank you. And they have that, the agency has that right to do that, I guess. But again, anytime you get a grand jury report, you obviously, it gets your attention. It got mine. I wasn't aware until I got back from my vacation. It was on in my mail stack ready to read, and I just was not aware this was going on at the time, at this time. And after reading through it, I'm not quite sure I could see, just having lived through it and understanding the issues we were dealing with, they were apparent in the report. I think it aimed, and I think that because of that, the lack of communication, what we've seen and what we've talked about, and I'm glad the city has started to take some of those recommendations that we've taken a position to try to make sure we live to them, but also corrected them as we did in these letters where we thought we're in the right. So I appreciate staff, you taking the role of this. I think it's appropriate and measured in terms of what we need to say back to the grand jury on this issue. So just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilmember Ledesma. Councilmember Sandin?
And I was going to use the exact word measured. I think this is a very measured response. It's come to me, although I don't want to confuse it with what's here today. WSAFCA, and I reported on that at our last meeting, that WSAFCA actually took action on a response that has some similarities, but it was not drafted by the same staff member. And LAFCO also had a response as well, which I mentioned today. So I feel this is a very measured response and very concise. And I think we could this feels appropriate to me. We could take to task the whole grand jury process, et cetera, but this actually just responds to the points, which is what the process requires and requests.
Thank you. Any other council discussion or questions? Councilmember Guerrero.
Thank you. And I wish I had the opportunity to take a look at what exactly WSAFCA did. It's not included in the staff report for me, but I do appreciate the verbal report. It probably would have felt more comfortable to take a look at what letter they drafted, and in their response to take that into consideration as part of my decision today. And because I haven't had a chance to review all that information, I'll be abstaining.
At this juncture.
I'll move the recommended action.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. We're moving on to item 7, which is a consideration of a contract extension with Zen City for social media sentiment analysis software. Mr. Robinson.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The original contract with Zen City was undertaken in 2017 in response to a fundamental challenge that faces West Sacramento and all jurisdictions, which is basically engaging the community. And how do you incorporate the opinions of so many people meaningfully into the decision-making of the council and the recommendations that staff makes? Logistically, that's very difficult using the traditional means, which would be a meeting. So, for example, in West Sacramento, there are about 38,000 adults in the community, and on any given council meeting night, about 37,995 of them are not here for various reasons. So in the past, it was difficult to get around that. There's polling and there's different things that you can do, but there's challenges associated with each one of those. They're expensive and they're sporadic, and there's statistical questions. But social media has created an opportunity for the harvesting of opinions and ideas and thoughts that people are publicly posting out there all the time. And that's really the point of the Zen City platform. It's a social media sentiment analysis platform that uses artificial intelligence to look for West Sacramento specific references across a set of publicly available websites and social media feeds, and then it distills those down into categories and assigns sentiment values to those, so it makes it kind of actionable information that the council and staff can use. So originally, staff, as we said, we brought forward a contract in 2017. The city of West Sacramento was actually the Zen City company's first U.S. client. Now they have 60. The council renewed the contract with Zen City in 2018 and approved funding for 2 years' worth of additional service on that license in the budget that was approved for this next budget cycle in June of this year. So the purpose of this staff report tonight is to request contracting authority to implement that contract.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Robinson. Is there any council question or comment?
Yes, I have a question on page 2. There's a reference to added functionality, which will offer the potential for even more significant benefits. Could you go a little more into what that is?
Yeah, The three ways that we use the platform now primarily are the reporting that's done for the council. So there's a monthly report that's prepared that kind of gives an overview of all the sentiment that's viewed. We also use it internally to improve our communications. So we will look and try and correlate a post or an event that happened with what happens in, the social media environment, and use that to kind of calibrate, what we can do to make more people interested or to have that interest last for a longer period of time. And the third way, and this is what I was referring to in that sentence, is to begin to assess the qualitative impacts of projects that we do out in the field. So for an example of that would be, if, historically, we're very good at knowing measuring progress by outputs, so we know how much money we spent on something, or we might know how much asphalt we put into a road, but it's really difficult to see, when a project has been done, how that project might have affected how people feel in the community. For example, if we clean up a homeless camp and connect the people that were living there with services and clean up X number of yards of debris from that site, we know all those metrics. We know we moved this many people, we know we moved that many yards of material, but we don't necessarily know historically if people feel any safer walking the city's trails, for example. And we're exploring with Zen City now. We had begun this previously. We've been exploring with them the possibilities for, finding correlations between changes in the volume or the sentiment on social media relative to things that we're actually doing in the community, and using that as a way to kind of gauge the effectiveness of the work that we do.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
John, you had mentioned that West Sacramento was the first to use this tool,
Yes.
And now there's 60 other jurisdictions.
60 plus, yeah.
Could you give a little handful of examples of what jurisdictions?
Yes, I'm not sure which ones have actually signed. What happens is I get calls, so the ones I'm familiar with may or may not have actually done contracts yet. So I know the number is correct. I know Elk Grove has talked to them locally. There's several cities back east, the names of which are escaping me. I can get you that list. I know they're talking to some big recognizable cities, but it's a range. There's counties and there's cities that go from much smaller than us up to major Chicago-sized cities that they're working on now.
Would you characterize this tool as being a trend in cities to engage their community and or to analyze the feedback from the community?
Yes, I think there's a recognition, not necessarily this specific software, but the idea that social media sentiment is just out there and is an information resource that can be used to deliver better municipal services, I think is definitely something an idea that's catching on across local government.
Are there any other competitor programs to Zen City that you know of?
There are companies that purport to do similar work, but none that I'm aware of that use artificial intelligence in the same way to both categorize and assign sentiment values to the posts.
Any other questions?
Not at this point.
Go ahead.
No, how do I?
No? Yeah, I think as far as, the concept of, are there any other programs? When we decided to get Zen City, it was before my time, what was the process to acquire this particular company?
That was done under a sole source approach, because at that time there was definitely a complete paucity of competitors in that space. It was a completely unique tool at that time. I believe it still is primarily, but there is more now. But at the time there was clearly not a competitor, as far as we were aware.
So do they have technology? So it's the artificial intelligence that keeps us attracted to them, or is it because we have a relationship, they know how we work and they're kind of plugged in that we continue?
No, it's the substance of the product. I think there are, to my knowledge, it could be that there's something out there that we're not, aware of. So I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of the industry, but to my knowledge, there's not another product, like I said, that both categorizes posts that are out there into categories that make sense for local government and assigns sentiment value to those so that you can track across categories and sentiment.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
I have 2 requests to speak cards. The first is from Pat Flint.
I just have a couple of questions I think you should be asking. How is this a useful tool to the public? Well, how does it benefit us? What is the value to the city? I mean, you're gathering this information. What are you doing with it? I see nothing in this report that says that. Is it worth the expense and to extend the contract another 2 years? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flint. Danny Langford?
Sorry, I hurt my back again. I've been disturbed by Zen City since you guys hired them. And the fact that it was from Tel Aviv, Israel, even bothered me even more. And I'm not the only one. Community members left and right are having the same conversations with me. And on the information I could find, there's only 11 cities. Dayton, Ohio, that has a population of 141, Philadelphia, 1.6 million, San Francisco, 885,000, Fort Lauderdale, 182,000, Arlington, Texas, 365, Cary, North Carolina, 165,000, Austin, Texas, 950,000, Corona, California, 167, Aurora, Illinois, 201, Houston, 2.3, and the closest thing to us is Beaverton, Illinois, Oregon, with 98,000. $20,000 for 53,000 residents for 25 miles. That's a lot of money, and it might seem like peanuts when it comes to our budget, but there's so many other things that we need focused on. Personally, I know that staff, commissioners, and council members, you guys all read what's on the discussion board, and the discussion board can't be spied on by Zen City allegedly because that's a private, or it's not a public Facebook page. And honestly, I don't want them spying on my Facebook page. Unless I friend you personally, you have no business. I realize it's not private, it's a public thing, but there's securities to it. And people don't want to be spied on. And honestly, a company from Tel Aviv, Israel, I don't want them spying on me. And people aren't going to post on their private pages what they're really thinking. They're posting that stuff on the discussion board. And I think every one of you sitting up there right now reads that stuff. And I know staff reads it because comments are made, just like your question tonight, Karina, that you asked, which was some comments that were made on the discussion board on this very issue when somebody posted it. It's very disturbing, very disturbing. And I really ask that you don't continue this. Be in the community. If you guys don't know what's going on in the heartbeat of this community by the events you do go to, the people you do talk to, the things you do read, then there's a problem. So please don't pass this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Langford. I'd like to return the discussion back to the council for additional questions and/or comment. Councilmember Sandine.
Yeah, in our last meeting, we had the quarterly police department report, and in that was, it went into a bit of detail about the Zen City use and the report, and I frankly would feel really uncomfortable taking away a tool from our police department because I feel like we need to be giving them all the tools that we can for them to do their work. So with respect to some of the concerns, I think next time a contract comes up, I think open competition, et cetera, I at this point would feel really uncomfortable taking away a tool from a department that we're trying to give tools to do their work.
Any other comment or question?
I actually do want to know a little more, how is this helping the police department again? I don't recall.
They use it to assess the effectiveness of their outreach for their different events. Like they have they look at what is the sentiment around their boxing camp or around their different events for one thing. And I know that I don't remember what the reference was, like Councilmember Sandine said, but in the last policing report, they did make reference to it. I don't remember the issue that they were using it for there, but they've used it for that. I know in the past also, they've received reports. This isn't kind of the regular use, but they've seen things on Zen City that alerted them to things going on in the community that hadn't been reported. Like there were mailbox thefts that occurred at one point that I guess, I assume everybody thought everyone else was reporting to the police, but they hadn't heard of yet, but they saw it on here. So to my knowledge, that's only happened the once, but that's another use that happens. But basically, it's an extension, to my knowledge, of, trying to understand how their outreach is working in the community to make sure they can maximize that.
Councilmember Ledesma?
I'm done. Okay. Thanks, John, for bringing this back to us, and it does give us a chance to kind of reflect on how we've used it, and it is something that is new, as is the world around us, right, in social media, and our use of that. And I think as a society, we're all learning around how we individually choose to use that tool, how it has influenced public policy discussions, community discussions, and even interactions. It is changing rapidly. It has changed rapidly. I think in our own community, even the discussion and the feedback tonight was it kind of reflects a sentiment of how people feel about social media. I am not part of the community discussion board. I use it as a tool to check in on family and friends. I look at it as a tool to occasionally tell folks the good work we're trying to do here. And it's because, public engagement has become something different. And because people have this platform, or multiple platforms, Instagram, Twitter, and you name it down the line, not just Facebook, it's everything else that people use as their platform to get an opinion out. Those are A, public, and B, they are people's personal channels. And they do, the interesting thing that I've noticed over the past couple of years is people don't go through the sentiment that is out there can sometimes show up on Facebook or Twitter or even Instagram, and I not know about it, right? It's not something that is, I'm trying to think of the right word. It isn't, they choose to go through that channel to raise an issue that we otherwise don't know about. So the police using it as a tool to understand their sentiment towards their outreach to see whether it's successful or not is pretty useful. If people aren't calling the police to say, hey, good job, I got a lot of work out of it, this is another way to do it. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't see our public works person here. I want to say we even used it as a tool to identify when we were doing some pavement, some of our pavement repairs. We used it as an opportunity to people were reporting, hey, I got a pothole over here on Industrial or on Park or wherever it was. And we were able to say, as a way to gather that information and know where maybe some hot spots were. Because people aren't feel that they feel more compelled to put it on Facebook than call Public Works and say I have a problem. And that's not a problem. I'm judging them for making that choice. But that's the point, is that we got to have every tool available to be able to understand what our community is asking for. So it is, to me, that's why this is an important piece to continue learning from, to see where the feedback is. It's helped. It's helped me understand that what may be raised here is an issue, whether that's pervasive throughout the city or not. If that's, not everybody can be here on a Wednesday night at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock and voice their opinion. And I only have 1,100, maybe 1,200 friends, and it's a lot, I know, but a lot of people have friended me, and I'm not on it every day. I've chosen not to get my news. I still interact with people, try to personally, and engage them in a discussion, rather than kind of what the debates that can happen there. So again, it gives me an idea, it allows me to understand when I get those reports, how big of a deal was this in the sphere of what's in it? And you see bumps of positiveness and bumps of negativeness coinciding with whatever the public debate is. But they're never, it kind of gives you a better scope and scale of what it is what is a public sentiment. So I think, having that perspective is certainly one
as a city, we're learning. We're learning how to navigate and communicate and listen to the community differently, because they're talking differently. I know the mayor was on this bandwagon a few years ago. The public hearing process is an antiquated relic of public squares and noticing people to make their way in on the first or second reading of an issue. And we just don't do that. Things happen in nanoseconds and in places we don't discover anymore. And it used to measure your public outreach or your ability to get message out by getting video clips or news clips of your public paper or whatever else, or comments. And even that's, antiquated, because now you can get it all and see reaction actually happening in time. So I think this, I think it's just understanding. I think I understand people may have, it makes me concerned that maybe when I post a picture of my kid starting her first day of her senior year gives a clue to something. That's my private message. I chose to post it. And I understand somebody could be looking at that and getting a different idea, either a nefarious idea about getting the age and whatever of my daughter, or doing whatever else, or publishing something may have some other use. There are people looking at your Facebook today, and I think it's the nature of that. And I think there's two different discussions here. One is how can we gauge public sentiment, and how do we get better as a city understanding what our city really wants? And two, it is about social media. And I think if those who are fearful of the kind of being watched and what their things being said about them, they should be. I mean, that's because it's a real thing, right? Advertisers, it's no accident you talk about tonight or Google up, I'm shopping for a mattress, the next day it happened to me. Today, I got an ad for a mattress seller. Like, how did they know that? Yeah, that's the reality of kind of when you're on social media. That's the platform. But I think in this case, that should, that for that reason, social media should be on everybody's radar from a social media safety perspective, especially for kids. Here, this is about to me, this is nothing than a leap forward in getting video clips or media clips or newspaper clips. What are we feeling? What's the community saying? And I think in this age where things are rapidly changing and sentiment gets diffused into all these different areas, having a service like this is even try it for another 2 years. And I agree with you. In 2 years, we'll evaluate it again if there's more services that provide it. I think it's cities are learning. We have to learn how to adapt to this. So I'm supportive of it. Just want to make sure. I think I asked this 2 years ago, or last time we renewed this, is we're careful with whatever data we gather, and that we kind of just because that is part of it. It's a service we get that just categorizes this series of posts and for us aggregates it into a report, and I find value in it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ledesma. Last meeting, we received a presentation on 21st century policing, and one of the comments that was made was about how our officers are working with local motels to help detect sex trafficking. And I made a comment about how a few decades ago, it was a lot more easily detected because people would be on the streets approaching cars in person. Now, the sex trade and human trafficking happens mostly online, and it's very hard to detect. So you have to employ a new set of skills in order to find those victims. As times change, our needs and our tools have to change along with them in order to keep pace with what we need to be doing here. I sit at soccer fields every Saturday, and when it's not the soccer field, it's the baseball field. And when I'm not dropping off a child and walking past the Active Aging Knitting and Crochet group and talking to them, or going to this morning to talk to Downtown Streets team members to see how their experience is. And by the way, there is some feedback. They want to clean up some area over by the underpass because they said there's a lot of trash there and it reflects poorly on them. They don't want the community thinking they're not doing their job. But, in addition to the grassroots events and all the other, conversations you have at Lenice's Cafe or any other wonderful local business establishment, there's only 24 hours a day. And as much as my husband would, I'm sure, love to use all 24 going out there and doing more of what we already do, the next best thing is to have the benefit of a tool that could help me do my job better. I don't have any illusions that I'm the voice of the community, because I don't think there is any one community in this city. I think we have a multifaceted and a wide complexion of people in our community that represent people in our city. But even at the ball field, you could survey a bunch of parents sitting in their lawn chairs watching their children play, and they would all have different perspectives as to how we can improve our city and what needs to be done. I think we all have the same goal, which is to live in a great place, but the methods of how we get there might differ. And so it is helpful to be the best educated at and knowing what the community's lens is, because I certainly have mine, and I know people who are in my circle, my echo chamber necessarily, wouldn't necessarily reflect a lot of those things as well. But we can't do an effective job unless we understand that our lens is not the only lens, and our friends' lens, or the people we surround ourselves with at Lenice is not the only lens. And so with that, having the ability to have better insight into community priorities, and knowing whether or not we are making decisions that are meeting those priorities, because we might have an impression that is grandiose, and we find out through Zen City, it fell a little bit flatter than we had expected. But just the ability to be better leaders and to be more responsive. I saw attachment 2, for example, and because of this report, I was able to go back to some of the folks in our community, the ones I speak about all the time, and tell them, look, there was a 97% sentiment about the downtown streets team contract renewal, and that motivated folks to go out there and claim the city as their own and take that trash personally that they can't access because of a chain link fence. And that tool is also used to tell us the things that aren't being done right and that we could refocus attention to. So the mention of Houston and Arlington and Austin, San Francisco, and all the wonderful cities that are taking this on, it just makes me proud to know that West Sacramento is a front runner, the trailblazer that started this. And with our small community of 55,000, many of whom are kids, while it does seem like we do and want to get to know one another, it doesn't hurt. In fact, I think it helps tremendously to have an additional tool that allows people to be heard, and that's the way I want to see it. People want to be heard, and they'll put their sentiments out there, and if those sentiments are funneled to me, and I know that reflects 23% of the community is responding about this particular issue, I know that I'm hearing something that I otherwise wouldn't be hearing in my regular daily experience. So I fully support this item, and at this juncture, unless there's any further comment or question, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move the recommended action.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Ledesma and seconded by Councilmember Sandin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions?
Aye.
The motion carries. Moving on then, thank you, Deputy City Manager. Moving on to item number 9. And that is the public hearing and first reading of Ordinance 19-10, approving a development agreement with Precise Readings Analytical Laboratory Services, LLC, for a cannabis testing laboratory facility at 2568 Industrial Boulevard, Suite 100. Hi.
Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem.
And Justin Hardy, Senior Planner?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, tonight before you, and good afternoon, remaining council members. The project before you is a consideration of development agreement between the city and Precise Readings Analytical Laboratory Services, LLC, at the 2568 Industrial Avenue, address. It's an existing multi-tenant industrial building that is existing today. They're looking to occupy roughly 2,900 square feet of that existing building. And it is zoned M1, light industrial, which is the surrounding community, and the port is M3 to the south. This is sort of the last piece of our cannabis permitted uses that it was approved several years ago, and this is sort of the full circle of all those uses. So we have indoor cultivation, we have manufacturing, and the distribution, and so the laboratory analytical piece is a remaining Type 8 license the state has that we do not have currently in operation. So this would allow potential other business operations, as the applicant has alluded to, that could potentially arise from the existing businesses or any future businesses that would come forth and get approval from Commission and Council. The existing, like I said, there is no other existing laboratories at this time. We are currently evaluating another laboratory in town for future consideration. They have yet to go through the commission process as well. The development agreement that's before you tonight is consistent with previously approved cannabis projects. There includes a revenue sharing. It is an annual review of the development agreement and the safety security plan, which includes no signage and no odors specifically. No notification whatsoever what type of business is in operation there. The safety security plan has been reviewed by police and will continue through that process until they are comfortable in the end with that. The Planning Commission reviewed this project as well on August 15th. The use permit was approved, subject to and recommended the adoption of the development agreement. The use permit is predicated on adoption, ultimately, of the development agreement, which is before you tonight. This concludes my comments on the project. Staff and the applicant are available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. I'm going to turn it over to the council for any questions. Mr. Hardy?
Just a quick question I have.
Councilmember Guerrero.
Thank you. I wanted to see, as far as vetting this, with the neighbors that are in existence today, when is that process happening now? Will it happen? When will they be informed, the tenants that are in the area?
The project was notified in the standard radius public noticing that we do.
Mm-hmm.
The property owner, Ethan Conrad, signed the contract with the applicant for his building. The property went through the standard mail noticing requirements, noticed in the paper, as we do.
Was there any feedback from anybody?
I did not receive any phone call or any correspondence of any kind on this project.
Mr. City Manager, have you received any feedback?
I would say nothing official, just anecdotal from some of the neighbors there, more in support of looking forward to employees being, potential customers for, say, a local brewery. But other than that, I haven't received any official correspondence.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Councilmember Ledesma.
Thank you. And I was going to say, I did receive a communication from the owners of Bike Dog, who were just trying to check in on behalf of the applicant and their support for this. So I know they've been notified. They're aware of them. Thank you for Justin for bringing this to us. It's been a while since we looked at a DA for one of these, and I know it's just more of a curiosity question, because I know when we started getting these a few years ago. You made mention of maintaining odors and everything else. It's standard language now in our development agreement, right? That how do they contain odors? And I think we got a couple of education classes by a couple applicants on filters and kind of how they use to kind of reconvey, keep odors within the place, and which was a primary concern. But it's just a question if we know or not. Have there been any new state standards on that? I know this is more of an industry best practice about what that meant. Are you aware of any state standards on what it meant to contain
kind of odors within buildings, whatever else. Because that was our concern at the time, is like that if you talk to an auto body shop, there's standards of air filtration of paint booths, right? That are state standards. But has there been any in this arena that have been? I'm just curious by way of an update on how this industry has progressed.
I don't have any specific information regarding specifics to air scrubbers for the type of business category. I'm happy to take a look and see if there are any specific air quality measures in place and report back.
And you don't have to do it to a council meeting. I'm fine with the DA because it covers this, and we've made sure that every applicant knows that this is a conditional use permit, and anything goes outside what you specify in the development agreement gives us the ability to go back and look at that conditional use permit or revoke it. So I'm fine with it, but it is something that I think as planning and community development kind of think about this, and if this business continues, just keep aware of those kind of trends, because I think that does give the public some trust, kind of how that part is. And we don't get to regulate that. I think we take their, whatever the best practices are. Anyway, I just want to update on that. Thank you for bringing this up.
Thank you, Councilmember Ledesma. Any other council comment? I think if I were to watch a meeting from 2 years ago and have this item before me, my questions would be a lot different, but we've traveled quite a while through manufacturing, cultivation, distribution, and other types of DAs that have come before us, even though we only have 3 that are currently in business. I just had a question. You did cover one of my questions about signage and any kind of indicators of what would be in that business, which we very clearly signaled we do not want any kind of indications of the type of business. However, if there were someone on the street that were going to come to me and say, well, what type of business is it? Since it's testing as opposed to the traditional DAs that we've received, is there a picture that you can paint so that we could communicate to the community or the folks that talk to us what it is that entails?
The applicant here, which would be specifically operations of that, would be probably best answered by them.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And who's that? Hi.
Ian.
Please approach the podium. Thank you. What's your name?
My name is Ian Jacinto, and I am the operations manager of Precise Readings Analytical Laboratory Services.
Okay.
Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Jacinto. Can you please tell us what exactly would be taking place in the testing laboratory?
It's pretty much going to be, we would be accepting samples from distributions and licensed distributions and micro businesses prior to their product being, sold on the retail level. Sorry, would I be able to read something for you here?
Yeah, no problem.
So, yes, as I said, in the laboratory, we will be accepting samples of product from California's licensed cannabis distributions and micro businesses, whom all require compliance testing from a third-party laboratory. Samples will be tested in multiple categories on a pass or fail basis prior to their release and distribution to the retail sector.
Okay. So do you anticipate that this type of business would result in, say, large-scale fumes or odors that would come from the actual cannabis plant?
So I guess from estimations, the most we'd have in the laboratory at one time would be anywhere from 1 to 3 pounds of cannabis due to everyone's samples that they leave with us, and we're supposed to retain them for at least sample reserves for 90 days according to the Bureau of Cannabis Control. As of fumes, there wouldn't be anything like, leaking outside to the public. It wouldn't be too strong. We wouldn't be carrying a large amount.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, if there's no other council questions or comments, I am willing to enter. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. At this juncture, I'm going to open up the public hearing. I don't have any requests to speak. However, since it is a public hearing, I'll invite anybody who wants to approach the podium to give public comment at this time. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and turn it back to council for any questions or comment.
I'll move the recommended action.
Thank you. Recommended action by Councilmember Ledesma. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Guerrero. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing that, motion carries and item 9 is approved. Moving on now to...
One moment. Sorry.
I think we would suggest that you advise the audience the second reading and adoption is tentatively scheduled for October 2nd, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Do you need me to repeat that, or is that sufficient? Okay, great. Thank you. Moving on to item number 10, and thank you, Councilmember Sandin, for that signal, which is the public hearing and first reading of ordinance 19-12, 19-13, and 19-14, approving modifications to 3 separate development agreements for commercial indoor cannabis cultivation, wholesale cannabis logistics, distribution, transportation, and cannabis manufacturing at 2505 Front Street. In consideration of Resolution 19-83 to terminate by mutual consent the development agreement adopted via Ordinance 18-4 for wholesale cannabis logistics, distribution, and transportation at 2505 Front Street, Suite A. At this juncture, there's been a request to continue this item to a date uncertain. However, I'm going to open up the public meeting. I have no request to speak, but if there's anyone here in the audience that would like to comment on this item at this time, seeing none, we will go ahead and request that the meeting be set to a date in the future that is not yet certain. Leave the public hearing open. And with that, we are going to move on to item number 11. Items left are council calendar.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. An item that is not on your calendar in the packet, next Thursday, September 12th at 11 a.m. is our employee picnic and benefits fair, and that's going to be at Bright Park, and you all are invited to attend if you would so choose to. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Berlin. City manager report.
No report tonight, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. And city attorney report? Thank you. Staff direction from council members. At this juncture, I do actually have 2 items that were put on as agenda item requests. Now, is that under D or E, actually? Are there any other staff direction from council members at this time?
Asking the council to request submitting a letter to both Union Pacific and Sierra Northern Railroads, reminding them of CPUC General Order number 135 about keeping roadways open at grade crossings. And the order states, I know you have this in front of you, but the order states that these crossings should not be blocked longer than 10 minutes. And I would just like us to consider going on record, having a letter sent to them, reminding them of that. So I see council's, I guess, concurrence, or do we need a motion?
I would support that.
I would very so support that, too.
I agree. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much
for
for bringing
bringing
that
that up.
forward.
Thank you for bringing that up.
The second is a request by me for a future consideration item for flavored tobacco ban, a citywide ban on flavored tobacco products. After a meeting with our city council representatives as well as members from the county, Yolo County, we received presentations, and one of them included the consideration of a citywide ban to prohibit flavored tobacco products within city limits. The reason I wanted to bring that forward is that I understand that it is a gateway for future drug use and or tobacco use for our young people, and given that it's been highly marketed, I wanted to make sure that children in West Sacramento weren't being specifically targeted. So with that, Aaron, our city manager, Aaron Morrell, is there any issue with staff capacity or timing to bring any of these items back to council?
Let me address those one at a time. So on the first one, no problem on that one. I'd actually suggest that, and staff can give some consideration, that we either in the same letter or as a separate letter address that also to the Port Commission. The reason I say that is because the Port of West Sacramento actually holds the lease agreement and rail operating agreement with the operators of the railroad, so could potentially be another point of influence, but we can definitely handle that. On the second item, that's something that we can definitely bring back for consideration. I think we would need a little bit of time to do some research into both what the enforcement mechanisms would be. There is some, examples we can follow out there. Right across the river, the city of Sacramento has already done this. Yolo County is also, as you mentioned, taken this step. But it's really a point of research and coordination with our police department and other city departments that may be involved, but we can certainly bring it back.
I also was thinking on that item, at some point along the way, having a discussion with Washington Unified School District and also the West Sacramento Chamber of Commerce, as the item is coming forward to us, I think that might be useful to have their input.
Sure. So, so on that point, the first one we can accomplish, I think, fairly quickly. The second one, we may need a little bit of time, but we can definitely pursue that.
And also, I've been communicating with Aaron about legislation that is proposing to ban the flavored tobacco products. So they're looking at that as well legislatively. I don't know what the status is on that, but I know I've been keeping you updated on what's going on.
Right. There was a last effort, the legislature, last time I checked, they had at least paused on the all-out ban, but deferred to local jurisdictions. But that would be certainly part of our research on that item as well.
Excellent. With that, is there any other comment?
So moved to adjourn.
Yes, thank you. There has been a motion to adjourn by Councilmember Sandine. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion adjourned.